What up, what up, what up, y'all? It's your boy Fink, the Ice Cream Man, checking in live and direct from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Man, I'm back, man, checking out this P. Diddy sentencing trial with you guys, man. This is part two. We got a little farther on in the date. Um, from what I've heard that knowledge that I've received, I've heard that his kids had spoken to the judge. I've heard some of the people that really know a lot about this case, the big wigs. Puff Daddy put out a video, 11, 12 minute video. I've seen it about basically all the things that he's done for the community and stuff like that, which I thought was a good thing to show him in a positive light. But from the different shows that I'm watching, they're starting to say that the judge is not gonna like that video. You know what I'm saying? Puff is supposed to speak to the judge today. Like I said, I just heard that the kids had spoken. So this, from what I've also heard, this could draw out to later this evening, maybe this weekend. Who knows when? So right now, what I'm about to share with you guys is the a reporter from Crime TV. Uh, I can't think of her name right now, but she's gonna give us a lowdown on what's going on in the Puff Daddy case.
Queen Elizabeth is with us right now. She is straight from the courtroom. She was in there for the entirety of the day so far. Elizabeth, it is so great to see you. I have to start with this. You can tell me how Sean Combs appears, how he looks, but you got to tell me what the emotion was like in the courtroom in the past hour. We're reading about it. We're hearing what his children, his attorney, Nicole Westmoreland, that they were sobbing. But I don't know if it's really doing it justice for what the feeling is like in that courtroom. Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. Well, when Sean Combs first came into the courtroom today, we were knowing what the tone would necessarily be. Would he come in? Would he appear confident? Well, when he did come in today, he was kind of in he was in civilian clothes. Now he wasn't in the MDC jumpsuit or anything like that. He was wearing a tan sweater, white undershirt, dark pants, all of his tattoos covered up. He waved at his family and he did prayers hands to him. And I noted even in my notes, we're not allowed to have electronic devices when we're in the courtroom, just about how nervous, to me at least, he seemed while walking in. And I can only imagine how he feels being in that predicament. He is facing sentencing. It could go either way. I think a lot of people obviously are anticipating what that sentence will ultimately be, but you could tell like it felt like the weight of the world was on him. And then I think, Jesse, honestly, when we had an attorney speak before Nicole Westmoreland came on, that was Jason Driscoll, really kind of on kind of some of the legal arguments. But I was very surprised, honestly, to see Nicole Westmoreland get so emotional during this sentencing. And it really kind of began when she started talking about Revolt Television and all of Sean Combs' accomplishments. Something that the defense, I feel like, has been using this as a way to kind of appease to not only the judge, but possibly the public in terms of his redemption when it comes to just wanting people to not think about this case, not think about the trial, not think about these allegations, but more so really just talk about his accomplishment and what he's done for the community, and more specifically what he's done to the Black community. And so Nicole Westmoreland really getting emotional when she was talking about how he spent a lot of time helping his community, how he helped break the chain of systemic racism, how he opened 3 charter schools in poverty-stricken areas, how he employed thousands of people. He gave opportunity to inner-city individuals. His companies were very diverse. He inspired generations to follow. They were they were talking about vote or die. And then Nicole Westmoreland kind of made it a little more personal, where she was discussing how some of her interests where she was super passionate about mass incarceration. She went to an event 8 years ago, and who was the speaker there? None other than who would end up being her client years later, and that was Sean Diddy Combs. And she said that he had said something along the lines of, "Listen, everyone, don't be afraid to dream. Just remember to wake up, put those actions behind your dreams." And she said that pretty much changed her life. She says, Mr. Combs isn't larger than life. He's just a man who made mistakes. And then I think the tears really started to fall when the children came to speak at the podium today. And it wasn't even necessarily a situation where they were rushed over into the front of the courtroom and all had to turn. It was really just kind of a simple, casual measure. They all got up to the podium. They all stood together, and it's 6 of them, minus the 7th child, that being, of course, baby Love, who's only 2 years old. Didn't see her in the courtroom or anything like that. Tran inside there, but all the kids lined up at the podium and sit near the jury box. And Quincy Brown speaks first, and I think what's important to note is Quincy Brown, his biological father is actually Albie Shur, and who had a relationship with Kim Porter. They were together, but Sean Combs adopted Quincy when he was very young, and then there was kind of some talk before, prior, just about the relationship between Quincy Brown and his biological father. But in terms of what he was speaking about today in sentencing, he said that he's our father. In front of us, we see a changed man week after week. We can see him evolve. Our father will never do anything to jeopardize his freedom. Now, Justin Combs spoke afterwards. Christian Combs spoke after that. But Jesse Combs is really where it started to kind of pick up in terms of the emotions again, where she immediately started crying. And I can only imagine how that feels to speak in front of not only the judge, but in front of your father, in front of a whole bunch of people in the media who want to hear what the kids have to say. Because even though we saw them inside the courtroom, Jesse, even though we've seen them in passing, the cafeteria and other things like that, this is the first time we're really kind of hearing them speak about how their lives have been impacted by Sean Combs's, the allegations that have been against him and the conduct, all of that stuff. But they said right up the front, they were like, we're not here to make excuses for him. We aren't here to excuse his mistakes. We need him in our lives. Jesse Combs talking about how she lost her mom, her mom being Kim Porter when she was very young, and that Sean Combs promised to be there to keep them safe. Then Chance Combs spoke afterwards, and she said that we're just daughters who need our father. When we talk, he speaks with a clear mind now. He's more patient. He's thoughtful. He wants to be a better man. He wants to be a better father. He's parented our 2-year-old sister from jail, and I see glimpses of our father during that. She said our sister deserves that, the sister being 2-year-old Love deserves a father who is present to teach her how to ride a bike, to tuck her in at night before she goes to bed, something that all kids want from their parents, right? Then Delilah Combs afterwards spoke after Chance. She said that we're scared of the thought of not having our mom and our dad in our
Shout
lives.
out to Imani.
That these are the years that will
Hit
never
that like
back,
button.
because I know
Subscribe.
that much, or that the missing years hurt because we lost our mom and they've already lost so much. So really that was kind of a time where you were really kind of seeing everyone get a little emotional in terms of people on the defendant's side, Sean Combs himself.
What you think, Imani? Is Diddy coming home today?
Inside the courtroom at the defense table, really kind of turn and look at his children.
What you think?
Kind of hard for him to keep a straight face with that. Like, he was so emotional, which I understand.
Is he gonna get the minimum, the minimum, which is 11 years, what they asking for, or is he gonna come home? What you think?
Very emotional, Jesse. I can definitely say that. It was a lot of tears inside the gallery, especially on Sean Combs' side, but definitely from Sean Combs himself too. He was very emotional while his kids were speaking.
It's not surprising you're seeing this. By the way, before I ask you,
I think he's coming home. Time served.
The love that you're getting online is quite palpable. Basti failed. Greetings, my queen. We love you in Germany. Christina Lester, super chat comment, who's been great today. Tell Elizabeth her skin is glowing as per usual. Nikki Hayes, how are you, Elizabeth? We heart and appreciate you. Anto Grego, beautiful Jesse and Queen Elizabeth. Love you guys. You make a great team. Maylin Borbin, oh, how I missed the chat, the lunchtime show, and the Long Crime team and panel. Long Crime, thank you for all your hard work. So, and super chat question from Mike. What's the update? Well, I think Elizabeth just laid out the entire update. I will ask you this. There was a question from the lone medic. How long does Elizabeth think Diddy will be sentenced for? Wasn't there a comment today, Elizabeth, from the judge that he does not see any reason to deviate from the guidelines of 5 to 7 years?
Yes, and so there was a lot of math that I was honestly doing, Jesse, because when they're talking about the sentencing guidelines, they're always talking about it in ranges of months, and so because there are 12 months in a year, I'm having to do quick math. So really what the judge is kind of looking at and what the PSR recommendation was 70 to 87 months, which by my calculations, because I don't have a calculator inside that courtroom, about 6 or 7 years. So I could see it possibly being definitely on the higher range than maybe the defense was expecting. I think, especially in terms of the judge's tone today when he brought up that Sean Combs had been talking publicly about possibly doing an in-person speaking engagement in Miami. I think actually I take that back. It wasn't the judge who brought that up, but it was more so
Hold up now. So you mean to tell me Puffy is already calling folks and booking gigs already? Already, that's what he doing. That's not a good look right there, though. That's not a good look right there, man. And one thing I found interesting is when I hear the young lady speak, said the judges, it don't seem like the judges willing to think about time served. It seems like he's thinking 6 to 7 years. I don't understand how my man can get 6 to 7 years for sex trafficking, and if you guys go back and watch these guys, they down with it. They having fun. They having sex with a beautiful woman and getting paid. You know what I'm saying? I don't She was down with it. They even showed video. So that's why I believe the man should come home, man. Y'all tell me what y'all think.
Government who specifically brought that up because it seems like from the defense's side that they were expecting possibly for him to be released today, pending the outcome of what the sentencing may be. And so, in terms of my personal opinions, I don't think the judge's death is going to be lenient today. And I don't know if
Ooh.
necessarily the victim impact statement, seeing the video that played inside the courtroom, hearing from Sean Combs's children, hearing from his defense attorneys will sway him in any type of way. I think he's probably already has his decision already made. But if I were to have my guess, I wouldn't put it past him to have anything below 2 years, and possibly with the possibility of time served, that's only another year in prison. And so we'll see what the outcome will be once that sentence is eventually handed down, which will be later this afternoon for sure.
Yeah, so we have a question also, and I apologize if you answered it before, but it's this is from Rebecca L. What is Diddy wearing today?
Yes, well, Rebecca, Diddy is wearing, because I always write it down, whatever he is wearing inside. He's wearing a tan sweater, a white undershirt, and he's wearing dark pants today, which is different from the last time I actually saw him in the courtroom, and that being the hearing that happened just last week when he actually appeared in the MDC jumpsuit. And so still kind of a similar color, but definitely in civilian clothes as opposed to last week's hearing.
And by the way, this revelation that Mia, who is one of the victims in this case, claimed that Sean Combs sexually assaulted her. She was supposed to provide a statement today. She had provided a letter to the court. The defense objected to her providing a statement in court. She didn't want to speak today. I mean, can you talk to us about that revelation too? That happened at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, that was a big revelation. I was expecting to hear some in-person victim impact statements, especially from government witnesses.
Come on, listen.
A big shocker with Chrissy Slavic.
So Mia, whatever the fuck her name is, one of the victims was supposed to give a victim impact statement today against Diddy, and she at the last minute she changed her mind. I'm wondering was she one of the ones that got paid? I'm wondering was the ones that he had to cut a check to, because that tells me why she gonna come back and give a statement when she got what she wanted. She got a check, so why is she gonna come back to court and give a victim impact statement? It don't make any sense to me.
Today that Mia no longer wants or wishes to give a victim impact statement, and Christy Slavic had said that Mia had submitted a written statement, and that was the same letter from the government sentencing memo. And then it was interesting, Jesse, honestly, to hear the judge kind of get a little kind of testy a little bit with the defense's side, because he pretty much said the tone of the defense's letter in response to Mia giving a victim impact statement was just inappropriate. And the tone of that letter was pretty harsh. It was kind of the same tone and impact that the cross-examination was, where they set out in legal filing, they called her a liar, they said that she was having kind of a fake demeanor while she was on the witness stand. There's all of these things. So honestly, Jesse, it wasn't too much of a surprise that she did end up changing her mind, but I can understand why she might have been apprehensive about coming into court today, especially given the defense's response to her just wanting to give a victim impact statement, something that we see that's pretty routine in these sentencing hearings.
So, Elizabeth, I know you have to jump back into that courtroom. excellent reporting. You're going to come back later on. We will see when the sentence is handed down. And also, Elizabeth's going to be on with me for a special sidebar later when we break down everything that happened in court today. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much.
Are going lower than the sentencing guidelines. And then, of course, that's where all the argument is, right? Because the defense wants time served, the prosecution wants 11 years. So everybody piles on the things that they think should make us deviate away from the guidelines to the north or away from the guidelines to the south. But the starting point that everyone deviates from on some level is the guidelines themselves that are based on a formula, and that formula, the starting place, is often, they don't stray very far from it, the judges don't, but they can, and the question becomes whether this is a unicorn that allows the defense to get a much lower sentence or allows the prosecution to get a much higher.
So it's interesting, Xavier Donaldson says to the court's in a difficult
We got 4 people checking us out, the Neighborhood Superstar Podcast, 2 likes. Let's get 2 more likes, y'all.
I like to believe that the real Sean
At least give your boy 2 more likes.
Read and what you heard from the family. Interesting point to make there. Sierra, you're outside that courthouse. You've been our eyes and ears about what has been happening there since the start of the day. As we're now coming towards the end. So now as we're coming potentially.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. One more. Let's get 1 more like. Hit that like button, y'all. It's free.
Yes and no. I mean, what's interesting about today is everyone has been relatively low-key, and I mean that in the way, yes, we are in the Southern District of New York. We do hear sirens, honking, people yelling. And,
Bree Sean. Shout out to Bree Sean. Checking out the Neighborhood Superstar Podcast. What you think? Is Diddy coming home?
July when it came down. And I mean, that was a pretty shocking verdict, right? The fact that there was a partial acquittal and we only had these 2 convictions on the transportation to engage in prostitution.
I think he's coming home today, y'all.
I think it was a huge surprise then. There was the baby oil and lube that people were squirting and yelling. I have yet to see anything like that today. I will say, though, more people are starting to trickle in now that we're getting closer to the end of the day. You know, maybe it's that people are getting off work early. It's a Friday. They want to see what's going on. Or maybe it's really that people are just getting extra antsy. They want to see what is going to happen. And we're inching closer and closer to P. Diddy, Sean Combs himself, speaking, so we can hear about that, hopefully. And then additionally, when the sentence finally does come down. So generally, it's pretty calm, but there are a decent amount of people who are here.
Yeah, when is that going to happen? It'd be very interesting to see. Serena, Xavier Donaldson says, I spoke to chiefs of police in Miami. I spoke to superintendents of education in Miami. Everyone said this is something different. Let me close with this. People like me are supposed to be here to show that we can do it. He goes also here in the SDNY, we've had U.S. senators prosecuted here. I dare anyone to say anyone else in the past 30 years did what he did in the NDC. The true Sean Combs came back. Talk about how he's helped so many inmates behind bars. Big question is, did the judge already go in today? I know what I'm going to sentence him to. And it's been changed, potentially, by what he's hearing in court today, particularly from the family members, particularly from the lawyers, both, either from the prosecution or the defense.
In my experience, and I've been on both sides of the aisle as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, just in my experience, typically a judge will show up with some idea of what they plan on doing. In fact, a lot of judges show up with a script of their reasoning for why they're doing what they're doing. Now, can they cross out the number and put a different number in there at the end of the day? Sure. That does happen. I've seen that happen as well, and they can be moved by that.
Well, how do you know that? How do you know that? Yeah,
I can tell. You can tell.
You can tell? Okay.
Yeah, because you see the judge saying all these very eloquent things and sometimes reading off a page, and you're like, you came in, you're prepared.
Okay, so that's actually a good point. Let me ask you, if the judge comes back after all this and says,
yeah,
I need 10 minutes. And
Shout out to Sheila Williams. She said, what is his sentence?
it could be.
He haven't been sentenced yet.
Red lines and some.
Only people that spoken was his family, his kids. They spoke, waiting on him to speak, and but now the sentence haven't came around yet.
Because the alternative is.
What you think? You think he going home?
And listens to everything and then formulates the sentence and the reasoning. And that's just too much. That's just too much to handle. A judge also wants to make sure that there's proper precedent for the sentence that they give. So it would be silly to go in there and, totally unprepared like that. So I do think the judge came in with some semblance of an idea, if not a total idea of what they want to do. But that's not to say that they won't maybe waver a little bit from there.
Joe, Dr. Laura R. Palmer asks, do you think the judge will use Diddy as an example for this type of behavior as a signal to other blanketed abusers?
I think that it could. The good news is the difficulty with that is that P. Diddy, on to the good or to the bad, is a very unusual case, right? He's a unicorn in that he's this big, rich, powerful guy. Do I walk away from this believing that people with resources are not going to still be better off than without those that are without resources? No, it's not going to change anybody's mind that way. Making him an example, I guess that's a possibility, but he's so different because some of us, or most of us, won't be similarly situated. But will he look at maybe a lack of him being contrite, a lack of him being humble, etc., and hammer him a little bit because of it? Yeah, he absolutely might. But I'm not sure any of us, or many of us, would walk away saying, well, when I'm in Diddy's position, I'll never do that. Because there's so few people that are in that position, other than setting an example for Hollywood, right? Which is not most of us. So the making of an example, yeah, perhaps as it pertains to the domestic violence side, without considering that Diddy is such a unicorn. But most of us are not going to be walking away going, oh, I got to make sure I don't do what Diddy did, so that I'm not simply situated, because I'm not simply situated most of the time.
We get a question from Alessia Macari. How long have they been inside? Since 10:05 a.m. We have been on the air since 10 o'clock this morning as well. Sierra's been out there since that time as well. Hopefully the weather's been holding up and everything's okay there. But look, we don't want you to miss a minute of what is happening inside that courtroom, particularly since there's no cameras. Interesting development in court. So Xavier Donaldson says, now what I'm about to tell you is in respect to what the prosecution accused Sean Combs of. Remember earlier on in the day when they go, he's got speaking engagements in Miami scheduled for next week, seemingly trying to suggest he's not taking any of this seriously. He thinks he's going to get out. Well, the defense fired back and said it's not a speaking engagement. It's a way to say that it's helping people. It's one of these events where he's going to help people and talk about the danger of criminal activity and what life was like inside. So Xavier Donaldson says we have a speaker ready to say these are not speaking engagements. May he speak. It's the executive director of Reentry One. Judge says, what is the gentleman's name? Xavier Donaldson says, Giovanni. Judge says, I have a letter from these others. 1 minute is fine. So it seems that there is an emphasis to try to speed this along. This person says, my name is Giovanni Saras for Reentry One. We have a couple of hundred people per year. I have read the letter of those impacted by the teaching and mentorship of Mr. Sean Combs. As a formerly incarcerated person myself, I see the impact. Sierra, this goes to a larger question. Two questions I'm going to throw at you. One is from Kentucky at Heart. What did Sean Combs help the inmates with? So we've seen a lot of letters about what he did. What's the impact there? If you can summarize that for him. How has he been helping people inside? And two, this is a question from Caba Corp TV. The judge had 3 months to look at all these statements. Why wait until the sentence day to decide? So I guess it's an idea of there has been a lot that the judges had to see, and there's a lot that has been prepared. You need a day to actually go through it and make the final arguments. But as we talk about what was being prepared, what were these inmates saying about Sean Combs?
So let's start with your first question, Jesse. What was P. Diddy, Sean Combs, helping all of these inmates with? And it sounds like it was some sort of game, the free game with Diddy. And basically what it was to lift spirits. Talk about, what we're going to do when we get out of here, positivity. And again, we have to remember that prior to all of this, Sean Diddy Combs, we know his name because he was very successful, both as a music artist, but also an entrepreneur when we're talking about Bad Boy Records or Sean John or Delion Tequila, whatever it may be. He had a business enterprise, really, so to speak. And I think what he's doing and helping these inmates is, hey, okay, here's what's going to happen when you get out of here. Here are ways that you can, inmates and, what he's done with them at MDC. Now, on to your second question about Judge Arun Subramanian, the fact that he's had, 3 months to go through and read all of these letters and collect all that information. Honestly, if you're asking me, I think he's been ruminating on it for maybe more than all of that time. He knew when he sat on the bench for the trial that he was going to be involved in the sentencing if there would be a conviction. So, of course, he's paying close attention throughout the entire trial, just to be fair at the trial. But he has to have in the back of his mind, okay, if there is a conviction, which it turns out there was, he's going to have to be involved in the sentencing. So if you're asking me, and kind of to the point that Serena Townsend was just talking about there, I believe that Judge Arun Subramanian went in today kind of knowing what he was getting into. I'm sure he prepared something. I'm sure he thought about all of it because, yes, it seems like a long day today. I've been standing outside of the courthouse for, X amount of hours. It seems like a long day. However, when someone's life is in the balance here, the future of P. Diddy, whether he'll be able to watch his young children grow up, that's a really big day, and it's probably going by pretty fast for him. So I think that Judge Arun Subramanian,
He got his life in his own hands.
being very fair about it, thinking through everything, looking through all of the guidelines. So he definitely was preparing a bit before that, but who's to say, could he be swayed by what is being said right now in court as we speak?
Yeah, and it takes a while to prepare all that information. The pre-sentencing report takes some time. They have to do a kind of a full background analysis of Sean Combs. It also depends when these letters are submitted to the court and are able to be reviewed by the judge. You have so many from family and inmates and people who testified at the trial. Sean Combs, the victim. So he is scheduling a lot of time for this. It is interesting. Giovanni Saris says in court, this is a new update, when a person creates his own program while incarcerated, it shows something. I know, I've done it. Not even a parking ticket since. I work with probation. I speak at many different functions with the private prison operator that we work with. So trying to suggest that Sean Combs, if he was going to be speaking next week or was planning to, it was for a good purpose. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to be out. I'm going to do speaking engagements. I think they're trying to really reverse that narrative. That seems to be what they've been doing throughout the course of the day. Serena, this is interesting. It's a question from Brittany Curry. Is there a possibility of Diddy being able to have his record expunged after so much time passes?
That's a toughie. I wouldn't expect that a record like this would be expunged anytime soon. There are mechanisms.
Nah, they ain't trying to expunge P. Diddy's record.
Situations, but I would be surprised with this type of conviction, especially considering how many counts he was facing and all of the extraneous stuff that we learned about him during this trial. I think it would be hard to expunge. I'm not saying it's an impossibility, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Joe, it's interesting when we talk about what the judge is considering here, because in a way, Sean Combs is different than anyone else. If the analysis is, hey, I have the possibility of releasing somebody, if I take him at his word, he has the power, the resources, the opportunity, the expertise to really help a lot of people. Again, assuming everything Sean Combs is saying is true, and if he can go out and try to help people, former inmates re-enter society like this organization, or try to tell people, let me tell you about what happened if you break the law. Let me tell you about my time at the MDC. If he can help people in a positive way, and not like any other kind of criminal defendant. There's criminal defendants who say all the time, I'll be a different person. I've learned from my actions. I want to be a productive member of society. It's a little different when you talk about Sean Combs. But should that be used to his advantage? Does that put him in a different position that can work to his benefit, whereas somebody else who is convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution may not have the same ability to do good as Sean Combs?
Well, Sean Combs has the ability to do it with resources put behind it, right? And so it is something to be considered, but it shouldn't be determined, right? Because, if I'm being cynical, here's a guy buying his way out of trouble, lessening the blow, as it were. Meanwhile, you've got people that are scared for their safety, because those same resources he can use to help people, he can also use to intimidate people. He can also use to make people feel a certain way. And naturally, Cassie and others would feel a certain type of way about whenever he's going to be free, whether that's a year from now or whether that's 10 years from now. So, we don't want to consider what his resources may be able to do so much that it wipes away consideration of the people that he actually hurt, that were, as the judge said, that were actually victims. So, it's a bit dangerous. And then, when we get into that question, I think it makes it easier to come out on did he side this way if he doesn't appear arrogant, if he doesn't appear like certain misunderstandings are happening. They've got to be on top of this narrative. There should never have been a discussion about him doing this speech next week. He wouldn't have been worse off for setting it up after he got out. You know what I mean? It still lends toward this thing that if he's being arrogant, if he's being flippant, if he's being a certain way, people, would make him less sympathetic. He has to get rid of that, and he hasn't done that yet.
Giovanni Saris from this reentry program. Judge, we're eager to work with Mr. Combs in the same way. We've established engagements in communities in need. Lastly, our mission is centered in the idea that those closest to the problem will solve it. The judge says, okay, thank you very much. So we'll wait to see who speaks next, whether or not we're coming to the conclusion. Which, by the way, Sierra, we just got this question from Dojo Jojo. Could this overflow into Monday? I hope not, but is it possible?
I hope not also, but I guess it is possible. It's interesting because this morning, reporter Elizabeth Milner and I met up, pretty early. Again, there was kind of a long line, so I saw her before she went into the courthouse where she is right now in the sentencing room. And we were chatting about this, and Elizabeth said, yeah, I've actually heard rumors that maybe this could go into Monday. So it is kind of out there in the ether that, yeah, maybe this could go out until Monday. However, it's interesting that this sentencing has lasted as long as it has already. It's 3:30 exactly Eastern time as I'm talking to you right now. This started at around 10 o'clock this morning. So for it to go this long already is very interesting. I think at the very least it stands out the lengthy process that has happened so far. But as we've seen with anything in the case against P. Diddy, anything is possible. And that means it could possibly trickle over into Monday. I don't know that it's likely, but it could happen.
Well, Mark Agnifilo, I think the argument you could say is Sean Combs' main defense attorney just made a statement to the court. It's getting late. I'll be brief. I started in the Manhattan DA's office in 1990. We mostly had to put people in jail. 1996, the Center for Court Innovation started John Jay, did a lot of studies. Domestic violence tends to come from childhood trauma. I think that's what he was saying. So interesting trying to explain that again about trauma, drug use, what have potentially spawned a lot of Sean Combs' behavior here. Serena, we're getting to potentially the end of this. How does it work now? Sean Combs will provide a statement. What's going to happen next in terms of what the judge will do? Is he going to take a break? How long will he speak for? What can we expect?
Well, different judges are different with respect to how quickly they render their decision after hearing all of this. I think even if the judge did come in decision and he knows what he's going to do, if I were a betting girl, I would bet that he will take at least a short break, even just for optics, to show that he's considering everything that happened today. And then we'll get his decision. He'll probably make not the most lengthy speech, but he'll probably say a bunch of things before just letting it all out there. And then we'll know. And obviously, if Diddy is not released today on a time served, and technically, even if he does get a very short sentence, they'll bring him back to do the calculations. So I don't expect either way for Sean Diddy Combs to be walking out of that courtroom today.
Just one follow-up question. Is this unusual sentencing hearing like this, Serena? We have a poll up. Are you surprised the sentencing is taking this long? 71% said yes, losing my patience. 29% said no, it makes sense. Have you seen something like this?
This is the longest sentencing I've ever seen. I think the only people benefiting from this sentence are the lawyers who are billing hourly.
Why don't you say it more bluntly, can't you? Joe got a super chat question. From Annette McMullen. Thank you so much for the super chat question. If names and celebrities were removed and only the informational and judgment from the trial, how would this change potential sentencing? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I don't really know. There were aspects of this trial where certain names were not used. I don't know how you interpret that.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going with that. I mean, I guess the connects to this larger issue is how much we expected there to potentially be testimony from people that were stars, people that we knew, and what that could do to the dynamic. I'm certain there's no star in Hollywood, New York City, or wherever that wanted to have their name attached to this thing, even if they're hoping that P. Diddy got off from it. So there would be, one would have to be very careful about, that's not exactly something, if I'm a publicist, that I want my guy doing, because he's certainly morally wrong, because of the crap that he did here, even if he technically gets off. So I don't know that would be any pony that any star would want to ride.
You want a different question? I'll give you a different question. We got a question from Matthew Colombo, Joe. What will some of the security risks be with Diddy being around other inmates due to the severity of the crime? So assuming he is sentenced to prison, what will be some of the security risks?
Well, the Diddy's of the world could be marks. They could be people that, you get points for doing things to, right? And so therefore you really have to take some precautions on some level to analyze potential threats, make sure he's in certain areas. Now, depending on what level prison he's in, if he's in a lower security place, that might be one thing. If he's in a higher security place, there would be another thing. So there would be, and in that way, there may be some precedent in that they compare what they've done pertaining to other people that were considered celebrities and things like that. What places do you normally send them to? What level of security do you still, how married are you to the level of security based on the crime committed and convicted of, and versus how do you deviate from that, if at all? And so a lot of those things are going to figure in. This time, this way, you have a little bit more of a precedent because famous people do go to jail sometimes. But my sense is they will take precautions in whatever place he's supposed to be housed at based on what he was convicted of.
We have an update from court, so we're getting a sense of how much longer this is going to be. Mark Agnifilo just said, we found in the microfilm there how his father died and a drug deal gone bad. Maybe that's the trauma. He had major depressive disorder. Okay, I'm going to sit down in 5 minutes. Then Ms. Slavic and Mr. Combs will have the last word. Okay, so we are getting to the end of this. Sierra, we've been talking all day about what Sean Combs will say, what he needs to say. Will it be consistent with the letter that he wrote to the judge? As somebody who's followed this case from the very beginning, what are you going to be on the lookout for when Sean Combs speaks?
I think it will probably be relatively consistent with what we read in the letter, right? I mean, Diddy had much time while he's been in MDC Brooklyn to come forth and put together kind of his thoughts about what he feels, how he's changed, how he's been reformed, and what he will do, how he will not reoffend, etc. But I do feel like there's something extra in the courtroom. There's something different besides just, writing with a pen and paper about how you're feeling versus actually having to speak publicly in front of people and talk about something. Once again, it's essentially his life on the line here when we're talking about his young daughter, Love. She's a toddler. He wants to see his daughter, grow up, and not to mention even the adult children. They're in a very important time in their lives. Any father, I assume, would want to be out.
And then his mama is 85 years old.
This is of the utmost importance, not to mention that he's already spent more than a year behind bars at MDC Brooklyn. And this is a common theme we've talked about throughout our entire live stream today. It's not a great place to be, right? We've heard a lot of pretty negative things about it. Of course he wants to leave, especially after he's accustomed to the lavish mansions in Miami and in LA and, familiar with New York. All of those things Diddy wants to be out for. However, back to my point about the heightened, sensitivity, the feeling in the courtroom, I think this is really Diddy's moment. He's sat through so many hours of the trial where he just kind of had to be very stoic. Of course, he reacted to some things. However, he didn't get up there and speak. He didn't testify. We know that Diddy, prior to all of this, liked to speak his mind, liked to set the record straight, so to speak. And now this is his one chance after waiting months and months, even years since the first allegations came out. Not to mention, his mother's there, his children are there,
because Mark Agnifilo just said, I'm asking you to release him today. He's been punished publicly. Everyone knows every twist and turn in this case. This is also a form of general deterrence. The publicity that he got, Miss Ventura's lawsuit, it destroyed his businesses. Is that a compelling argument, Joe? Is that a compelling argument that he has suffered enough? He has been punished enough that there's not more that you should do to him?
Not particularly, because America is a great country in that America is a country of a comeback, and there's nothing to say that P. Diddy can't come all the way back. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I don't know that Cassie ever gets over what happened. Maybe she gets through it. Maybe the victims get through it, but they are forever changed, and so I don't want that minimized for anyone, right? And I think it would be very unfair to them for us to minimize that, particularly when you get, Big Diddy. I mean, all of the things that he wants to do. Well, he wants to see his toddler grow up. He wants to see fill in the blank or whatever else. Well, didn't you want to before all of this started happening? Didn't you want to back when you were up for conviction? Maybe you should have got convicted in the Shine case 15, 20 years ago. We've already been here. You already know what this is like. And here we are again. You've already done a religious album. You've already done all of the things that make you look like a changed man. Meanwhile, no change. So if the judge wants to consider what he's saying and take it seriously and look at the potential that he could be as a force for good with resources put behind it, that's fine. But what he's been through in and of itself, that wouldn't move me, not even one item.
Particularly, as we mentioned earlier, the letter from Cassie Ventura when she talked about how much she's struggling and the nightmare she goes through in the court.
That bitch ain't going through no fucking nightmares.
Of this crime, yes.
With $30 million?
Fuck
out of here.
To Cassie, but she is a victim of transportation to engage in prostitution. Okay, Serena, you might have noticed I didn't come to you for a while because I have a bunch of questions for you that I'm going to read in succession to you. So let's go to the first one. Confused and Callie asks, what are typical parole rules in New York and federal release, and for how long?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's all dependent on the person who's convicted and what they're convicted of, and so many other things that you learn about that person in interviews and whatnot. So it will all depend, which is always a lawyer's favorite answer. It depends. But it will be a level of pretty serious supervision.
Deacon Blue, shout out to Deacon Blue. Deacon Blue said, how about all the financially motivated people that lie under oath? What consequences do they suffer? That's a damn good statement right there, bro. In question.
There are many
obviously none. Because Maya, she was supposed to come there and give her a victim statement in front of the court. At the last minute, she changed her mind. So that made me wonder, did she get her check and ran?
Like unannounced searches or visits. There's a lot of, even if you're free, is what I'm trying to say, there's a lot of restrictions on your freedom.
Yeah, that's a good point. So wait, we're going to take a quick break before we get into Sean Combs because he's going to be speaking soon. Real quick super chat question for you, Serena. This is from Annette McMullen. Thank you so much for the super chat question. If this case was not involving a mega superstar, if and how would this be different? In other words, if the defendant was not Sean Combs, how would this play out?
First of all, you would never know about it. There are so many people, and I like that we have this platform to say this. There are so many people who are going through, similar charges or worse charges or easier charges that nobody ever knows about. It's cases like this that actually educate the public as to their rights, our rights, the criminal justice system in general. So it's great. It's actually great that we have this program, and it's great that we're able to kind of follow these things. But you should know that there is a difference, because the people who don't get that attention may not necessarily have the means to hire competent representation, or maybe the type of representation that they really want to speak for them. They may not be able to kind of get the public behind them to get that support. We see that with Diddy. We see that with other, high-profile cases. And so, and sometimes judges and lawyers get away with certain things when there isn't that microscope on them. So in a certain way, celebrities are watched more when these things happen, and therefore, judges and attorneys are held to the highest level of our law, but in other ways, sometimes we see that celebrities are looked upon to be made an example of. So it's potentially a wash in the end. But the biggest thing that you get out of this type of situation is that the public starts to learn a lot about the system.
And a lot about these crimes. I mean, how many? Elf Leonard became an expert at sex trafficking or racketeering at the very least. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. So, Sean Combs' defense attorney, Mark Nicola, is asking for a 14-month sentence. They're saying we're asking for a lot. Highlighting, says Sean Combs has genuine psychological challenges, that he suffers from PTSD. They're asking for leniency. Another lawyer is going to speak. Sean Combs is going to speak. Hopefully, we get to that sentence. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our live coverage.
All right, guys, you see it right there, man. So what y'all think? Is the judge going to give Puffy leniency today? I don't think the judgment is going to go down today. I think it's probably going to go down maybe Monday, not today, because what here in Tennessee is 2:44 right now. Over in New York, it's about about an hour ahead of us. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is going to carry on over the weekend. Like I said before, man, when Puffy first went to jail, I didn't think he was supposed to go to jail. Y'all go back and check out my content that I did on him. I did a reel on him as well. As you guys heard, it's supposed to be another lawyer speaking for the defense, and then it's gonna be Puffy. I'm gonna go ahead and get off, man. I got some things to take care of, man. When Puffy gets up there and speak, I'm gonna hit y'all back live, man. I appreciate the ones who checked out the Neighborhood Superstar Podcast. Like I said, man, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell the world. I'm out. Peace.